I live under your house. I don't actually. I'm pulling a merry prank. That's just the name of this game. This is an experience best played with the lights off, completely alone. You boot up the game. The DLC is the whole reason why I think this is such a special game, but in order for it to be as impactful as it is, we have to go through the events of the main story first. You start up, and you're in a hole in the ground. From your inner monologue, you learn that you dug these tunnels, and it dawns on you that you might be playing as the villain. You come across this room with 3 tunnels and a big door at the end. Your monologue asks which hole to go into first. One hole has some smooth rocks. Smooth rocks. The other one is very narrow. At the end, there's a cocoon that you cut open to find a corpse who you refer to as the creature I came out of. The door has this gatekeeper, although you can't do anything until you go to the last tunnel, where you go to sleep. This is a good time to mention, this game is like $3 on Steam, and there's going to be a ton of stuff that I'm not going to be talking about in this video. So if this interests you at all, I'll put a link to the Steam page in the description. You wake up from construction work above you, and out of hunger, you have the choice to kill and eat one of 2 construction workers. Later, people move into the house that they were building, and this all leads up to 3 nights in the game. These nights are not a point and click like how the game has been up to this point. It's a full 3D game. The main story in its entirety is really eerie. You're taking it from the perspective of someone who you don't even know if they're human. In the 3D parts, you look like you're the size of a child. I only assume that you're crawling around though. It does a good job of making you feel like you're this thing. You start to think about what your character looks like constantly, because there's no mirrors and it's first person, so you can't tell what you look like. Something about the inner monologue being in perfect English, when you know that the character doesn't have a full grasp of the English language, it all makes sense. Like, of course, it's in perfect English, because in its head, it can understand everything it's thinking. What doesn't make sense is, even when given the chance to kill the tenant of the house, you spare her, saying that something is wrong, and you'll come back later. You come back later, this time leaving a gift. It's a corpse. Going back home, you're greeted by the doorman, who mocks you for developing feelings for this girl. He says, your mere appearance will cause her to vomit, adding to the mystery of what you are playing as. The 3rd night is the climax of the main storyline. You go back to the house, you get knocked out, and you wake up in a basement. After leaving, there's a sequence where you're walking outside and you follow these lights to different things, each item having a significance to your character. Again, I'm not covering everything that happens in the story. I'm mostly going to be focusing on the DLC, so I suggest playing the game yourself. I also suggest subscribing. The final light leads you over to a sacrificial ring made of salt, where you lie down due to your body feeling weak. You wake up and you see the 2 people who knocked you out the first time and put you in the basement. After they realize that they left the candles for the sacrifice at home, you regain your strength and attack Marie, the woman who you were so obsessed with. After this, you will receive one of 3 endings. The first, where you go back to your lair and slowly cocoon over, just like your creator. The second, where you add her skull as just another body in the pile. And the third, where you take over her house, displaying body parts instead of flowers, and you mention that you were expecting children with the corpse of Marie, ending the main storyline. So you're probably thinking, that's more creepy than scary. There is something to be said about the camera being so short when you're playing as the creature, But at the end, seeing as you weren't in much danger to begin with, it's easy to write this game off as just an interesting story. So this is exactly why the DLC is so important. Before we get too deep into what happens, let's talk about the format of the DLC. We've completely ditched the point and click parts. You control your character in 3D 100% of the time, until later, but I'll get to that. And just alone, the switch from seeing a green 4:3 aspect ratio to color in 16:9 had me genuinely scared for what was going to happen. But it just adds to it to realize that due to the changed visuals and context clues from your surroundings, the reasons why it's scary is because you're no longer playing as the creature like you were before. You're in a different person in the same world. So the only thing you have to wonder is what's inside that house. You enter to see blood and body parts everywhere. I'm assuming that would be Marie. Ironic how this window being open is seen as a good thing now. Candles still in the room. Demon cave entrance in the basement. Demon cave entrance in the basement? Yeah, so if you thought clicking through tunnels wasn't that scary, here you go. You get to physically crawl through them. Yes, you actually have to crawl. I think this is where they want to clear up any confusion about whether or not the creature was just really short. The main story probably doesn't spell it out for you on purpose, leaving some room to think you were in danger, when in reality, its body is probably just so warped from crawling around these tunnels. Not to mention, as you're walking, the tunnels seem to get more and more narrow. It's so narrow, but I think I can get through. This person is crazy. It's around now when I start to question our new protagonist, because general curiosity can bring you this far, but to worm your way through a hole this small is something I'd never do, not even for $1 million. After slowly crawling your way through, you end up— oh shit, I think I'm stuck. I can't move. I'm definitely stuck. Fuck. Okay, we got out. Wow, that was a close call. It really makes you question why someone would do such a— I don't like that sound behind my back. Before you or your character have any regrets, you don't have any options but to find another way out. So all you can do is move forward. You eventually come to a crossroad. There's a few different paths to choose from. One has some smooth rocks. Smooth rocks. I have a feeling we've been here before. We get to see a pile of skulls, and all other paths lead to this. A series of drops that are impossible to climb up. We rant for a second about how we used to love going into basements. That's not weird at all, until we come across another tight gap. But when crawling through this one, you mention you can feel fresh air. Could this be the door outside? It's okay. We're not gonna panic like last time though. What was that? Everything's fine. We're almost through. You're stuck. You're in the game, allowed to look around, but you're stuck. But while you're stuck, we get to learn about the character you're playing as. You reminisce about how you got to this point. You apparently did something that the town will never forget, but we don't have much time to think about that because a man who works in construction shows up at your door. He tells you he used to work with a man named Bob, and Bob went missing while constructing a new house. He told the police, but they refused to help. He finished his job and came to you, just wanting to find his friend. If you haven't figured out already, these are the two construction workers at the beginning of the main story. So we went to find the new owners of the house to ask some questions, and here we are. This can't be how it ends. This can't be how it ends. With one last determined push, You try to wiggle your way out, and it works. I can't believe it worked. After being stuck for so long, you're finally out. But what lies ahead? Could it be the exit, like we thought it was? After walking down what seems like forever, we find freedom. Freedom at last. And before we find... This is my leg. We're back in the tunnel. Unable to move. Everything we just experienced was a dream. This is crazy, but it gets a little more insane. From our inner monologue, we finally see our protagonist giving into the regret. And this line is so good, I just have to read it. I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be useful. Heroes. Nobody needs heroes. Heroes get stuck in holes and die. After going back to sleep, we wake up again. This time, a red text is talking to us. If you look over, you see the legs of what looks like to be a human-like creature that says, "Come on, Nick, it's not all that fast. Don't you like it here?" So if you don't know, my real name is Nick, and at no point did I type in my name into the game. So look at this from my perspective. It's hard to empathize with a monstrous creature. So introducing a human who makes mistakes and experiences all these emotions while you're behind the controller, it's easy to immerse yourself. So then have the first entity that we encounter in the entire DLC call out to you by name, not just whatever your character is called. Your real life name is insane. So you're probably thinking that this has to be the creature we played as before, right? Well, I'm pretty sure that this is the doorkeeper, seeing as he's so close to the exit, as well as he mentions that the owner of this place is away on family business. They mention that they can get you out, but for a price. You say you'll do anything, and it asks you to beg. Not just beg, bark like a dog. Before cutting to this frame, saying, "You will become a creature persecuted by perpetual hunger and loneliness. You will serve us for 13 long years. I will free you from these shackles of stone, but your flesh will belong to us. Remember, your flesh will belong to us." Then cutting back to what looks like the beginning of the main story, completing the circle of life with a new creature that lives under your house. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed.